Hello everyone, my name is Young, and it's my pleasure to give you a short presentation in this afternoon. With the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be talking about my master's thesis from last year, where we investigated how the items performed differently in different test administrations of the Norwegian language test. Norwegian language test for adult immigrants is developed and assessed by Skills Norway. These are separated parts. There are separated parts in reading, listening, writing, and oral communication in Norwegian language test. We have selected the reading proficiency test responses from Norwegian language test for our data in this study. And Norwegian language test is a large-scale assessment with sample sizes around 8,000 for the formal test from May 2019 that we have selected, and 5,000 for pilot test in our sample from anonymous year. Both of test response data is dichotomously scored for 0 for wrong and 1 for correct. And so there are those two different test administrations we were motivated to investigate. The formal test is the official administration of Norwegian language test. Items are operationally used in multi-stage test form for high-stakes assessment, which means that a certain level of test results are used to apply for the citizenship or to admission for higher education in Norway. And the formal test is a criterion reference test in which the levels are set from the separate standard setting procedure and transferred with equating. The standard levels are built upon the common European framework of reference for languages. And on the other hand, pilot test is a low-stakes assessment used as a practice test for the candidates and pre-calibration for this equating procedure for the formal test and for the item estimation in the item bank. Our motivation of this study is that those different stake situation between formal and pilot administration will cause the bias in items. And we wanted to detect the items with biggest bias and map those items by using technical methods and illustrate those in terms of their characteristics. Here you can see briefly the routing structure of the reading test in formal test. This is an outdated version from last year. They have a new version from this year. But here you can see the structure that is used for this study. So for this study, we had two research questions by how do the items shift from the pilot test to the formal test? Here we wanted to see if there were influential diff items with a large effect size. Additionally, we wanted to discover the nature of diff items, such as direction and behavior of parameter estimates. For the second research question, what are the potential factors related to the item shifting from the pilot test to the formal test? Here we examine the item features and characteristics of both diff and anchor items, such as item format, count of words, and levels of items in each administration. So for the diff analysis, we used 56 common items in the pilot and formal test. Those were the binary data. So, and we have selected two parameter model for the examining item discrimination and difficulty parameters. And for detecting item invariance. LRT method has many benefits, such as to detect both uniform and non-uniform diff, and it allows various test lengths among test takers. This is suitable approach since the formal test of Norwegian language test is designed as multi-stage testing, and thus most of the test takers have different test lengths. So this table shows the overall structure for methodology procedure in this study. We did two steps purification procedure for the diff analysis. For the first diff analysis, we used all others as anchors approach to set all the other items restricted for each of the items that were analyzed for diff. And for the second diff analysis, we used those anchor items from the first diff analysis restricted and studied diff analysis again. And thereafter, we calculated the effect size to identify the items with large diff, large diff, and there we used expected score standardized difference as our criteria, using absolute value bigger than 0.8. And then finally, we compare the item features and characteristics of diff and anchor items. So the first step, we found 15 invariant and 41 diff items. And then in the second, we found more anchor items. And then finally, we detected 10 diff items with the largest ESSD, expected score standardized difference. Sorry. So okay, we can just get to those graphs. Here you can see the 10 diff items with large effect size with their item characteristic curves. We can see a test and dotted line for the pilot test. And the other, we can non-uniform diff that formal and pilot tests vary in both stiffness and location, which means that they have different item difficulty and discrimination. But yes, and this shows that the diff in items varies in amount at each ability level. Furthermore, we can see the item information curves of 10 diff items with large effect size, and item information curves show similar results as ICCs and show different discrimination and difficulty parameters between items, but this discrimination power is much more higher for the formal test than the pilot test. And also the location varies, as you can see. And with the test characteristic curve and test information function, we can see that there are much more information for the formal administration than the pilot, and which directly informs the measurement precision of the test. So we can know that there are much more standard error in the pilot administration. So I'll just quickly go through the descriptive analysis due to the time. And diff items and anchor items are compared due to their item characteristic, but we couldn't find a descriptive systematic difference between those items, except for the levels in the pilot test. For the diff items, the items were piloted in 2 levels. For the diff items, and the anchor items were piloted in in 1 level for the diff items. Sorry about that, the error. And anchor items were piloted in 2 levels. Oh no, fewer items for the diff items were piloted in 2 levels, but more of anchor items were piloted in 2 levels. So my time is up, but in conclusion, so I can, yeah, our hypothesis was originally the stake difference between formal and pilot tests, but our study identified another potential factor for the test administration design, which indicate that there can be an interaction between item context and test risk. Yeah. And delimitation and
yeah, go ahead.
yes, and some methodological impact and practical impact for the Norwegian language test. Yes, but I can yeah.
Oh yes, I'm sorry that you've run out of time, but
yeah.
Just to let everyone know that, of course, you'll be available in the scholarship area.
Yes.
Outside of room 1. You get to it through the main area, and for anyone who wants to talk to you more informally, and I'm sure people will come and find you to do that.
Yeah.
If anyone does have any questions already that they would like to ask, we can squeeze in a couple of questions. If you want to post anything in the chat, if you send a question to the stage area of the chat, I can pick things up there and read them out. Oh, Dominique is asking, could we have the references, please?
Oh, yeah. Those aren't all of the references, but I have only listed the references I used for the presentation. So there are more on the poster, and then on the paper for the collated papers for the alter.
Okay, great. So if Dominic wants to go to the scholarship area, he find everything he wants there as well. Yeah, great. That's very useful then. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to bring up our second speaker in this slot now, who's going to talk to us about about mediating communication and plurilingual speakers in Madrid. So we'll just wait for that to be brought up.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, fine. So we'll just wait for your presentation to come up, and then as soon as you've got control of your presentation, you can start and I'll disappear. I'll pop up and screen at the end to help with any questions. Okay?
Thank you.
I'll stay here till you get started, just in case anything happens.
It's taking a little bit.
Yeah, everything's a little bit slow, but
it would eventually pop up.
Yeah, it will eventually.
I trust it will. There we go. Can you see my presentation on
see
screen?
it fine, and we can hear you fine.
So the thing is that I see, okay, this is like 166 slides. Oh my goodness, is that my presentation? So it's starting from here. All right, then. So yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Ready to get started, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone, here in this room number 1, which is a big one. I was really impressed by the size and the turnout that this digital symposium is having in this second day. And I missed out on yesterday's session, so I hope I step up to the mark today and can give you some insights into my research, which was ready to be presented in last year's conference here in Madrid. And so it was very timely occasion to talk about mediating communication by plurilingual speakers in the very town, the city where I live and did my research. And the second headline that you can read below is a roadmap to assessing online and on-site social practices in post-COVID times. That's an addition that I think I'm not in a position to share evidence on how assessing online social practices have fared, because my research study was carried out prior to COVID, the pandemic. But I think I can set up some guidelines and some sort of roadmap to how to assess these social practices that I will be talking about in my presentation. So let me just click on the next slide. Just a little bit of background research studies I based my research on, and this is one by Tyrone. The individual, according to Elaine Tyrone, is a citizen that is immersed in a global world. And this is something that here in the European higher education area, we can see that mobility is at the core of exchange study programs these days. And this is where my research was set back in 2016-19, in that academic year, when I was living here in Madrid. And I followed up a group of students, of learners of Spanish who were taking Spanish lessons so as to start their degree, the university degree program in Madrid in the following year. So I need to get used to the clicking button thing. There you go. So Tyrone focuses that or states that the bringing into contact of the target culture and the culture of origin must be carried out from targeted observations, from observing languages and cultures that interact with each other, and students who bring in their cultural repertoire, and in this case it's a double repertoire, because it's a twofold one, because the students I will be talking about next bringing a double culture of origin, which is their target, their culture, heritage culture, meaning the Turkish one, and their acquired culture in the country where they were born, which is Germany. So one important issue here is that regardless of the cultural background and the linguistic background of the students, language development is fundamentally linked to social practices, and this is where the focus of my study is on. Empirical evidence support the relationship between social context and second language acquisition, which shows that the learner's target language input and processing of that input is social, in social settings are socially mediated. That is, the learners assert their social identities through their target languages when they're communicating in social contexts. There are many empirical research studies carried out in applied linguistics to second Spanish. As far as the new publication of the CEFR companion volume in 2018, most recent version just came out last year, 2020, the final draft, we may say, brings up an interesting, a new interesting field of study, which I think is where my main research focus is on, which is mediating strategies and how mediation takes a new role, not just as a communicative activity, a language activity, but also in terms of mediating cultural concepts. And this is something that is really one of the main topic addressed in my study, which is how mediation strategies and mediation processes can help in having a more effective communication and interaction experience in terms of language and culture acquisition. So when it comes to mediating communication, the CEFR companion volume lists two new scales from which I adapted the assessing rubrics I used to evaluate these three students' performance. The ones I'm talking about is facilitating pluricultural space and levels A2 to B1, because this was a longitudinal case study that took 5 months from the 1st of February, March to May, June 2016. That was spanned through 5 months. So it started with an A2 level, but the students eventually acquired a B1 plus level, which would help them start their degrees in October of that year, with the corresponding B2 level. That was the entry level required for all students to be eligible to start a university degree in Spain. So this pluricultural space, facilitating pluricultural space, which is called also the so-called third space, was one of the scales I adapted from the CEFR, but also the second scale called acting as an intermediary in informal situations, that is intermediating or mediating among friends and colleagues. So from these two scales that you may have a closer look at if you click on the link, I hope that Mariangela shared with you in the chat room, you can also have access to the poster and all the data and the evidence and results in a more detailed way. You're free to do that at your own pace and free time, because it's an asynchronous resource you can access. Is there for you to consult and check up later on when I'm finished. But there you can see that these skills can be used to assess the communicative efficiency and in terms of mediating communication efficiency of these three informants, students, learners of Spanish, that you can now have a look at on screen. Their names, Ahmed, Osman, and Fatih, make up this homogeneous informant group, experimental group of students who were studying Spanish in Madrid so as to pursue higher education studies. And their motivations were mostly related to in entering university preparatory programs so that they could also go back to their home countries, meaning Germany, and have those studies endorsed by their authorities in their countries of origin. So the methodology procedure, the research methodology consisted of 3 main stages. The first one, you can see there, face-to-face interviews, thanks to which I could elicit their sociocultural knowledge about Spain, but also what their communication needs were back in that day, but also what their future ones were going to be. So why did they learn Spanish? What was the purpose? And also this helped me draft and design the coming stages. Stage number 1, which is in turn the next stage, consisted of 2 in-classroom pedagogical interventions. Sorry, I skipped one. There we go. in which I was their language teacher for one day. I was not their language teacher. I was just participant observer of this research, and I was the research intern, but I wasn't their actual language teacher. They were taking private language lessons in a private school here in Madrid. So I got in contact with this school, and they let me in for only one day. So thanks to that short visit, I could deliver 4 surveys and questionnaires so that I could map their cultural perceptions, their misconceptions about the target culture, meaning Spanish culture, especially speaking about Madrid culture, and how students from their own class, not part of the experimental group, but who made up the control group, could interfere, could have an effect, whether positive or negative, in changing their misconceptions, in their misinterpretations of the target culture. And this is the core of my research, how plurilingual speakers, just like them, who have a 2-language background, bilingual speakers, could have an effect on the way they interact and succeed in their social interactions in the target culture, in immersion context, just like Madrid. And finally, the last stage of this case study was a set of outings around Madrid, made up of 4 different social interactions in the public and academic educational domains. And one of them, as you can see there highlighted, involved another plurilingual speaker from China, who was a PhD student in the Complutense University here in Madrid. So this student, they had to prepare a set of questions of their own choice, but always asking about these Chinese students' past experiences while learning Spanish in Spain, so they could also apply these tips and guidelines in their own intercultural communicative competence development, basically. So this proved to be much more effective than all the different mediating communication experiences that they had encountered throughout the 4 previous months with native speakers of Spanish in Madrid. And in order to evaluate that, I had to use these scales, as I said, taken from the CEFR, and they proved that the effectiveness of mediation provided by plurilingual speakers of other languages, of other languages than Spanish, proved to be much more efficient than the one provided by native speakers. As I'm assuming that my time is running out.
Your time has run out, yes.
I'm just letting you have a free look at the roadmap of how I could have delivered those 4 stages in a post-COVID scenario, or in a present-day COVID scenario, which is basically the assessment tools. You have the icons on the left-hand side, would do just as fine. So instead of going to have a face-to-face interaction with the students in stage 1, we could have gone for a hybrid pedagogical intervention, just like we're doing now. The host teacher would have invited me, just like the host moderator here today. But apart from that, I'm quite sure and positive that these days technology is on our side, and we could have delivered that same case study in 100% mostly same conditions as the one I delivered prior to COVID times.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. We have shared the URL link in the chat for the interactive version of your presentation. And for people who'd like to know a bit more, you can talk to the presenters outside in the scholarship area, and there's a scholarship wall there with more information. So thank you very much, Antonio. That was really interesting.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.